The former U.S. Army Ranger became a medical technician and eventually started an aid organization for refugees. In the message, his parents mention his conversion to Islam and explain they have no control over U.S. policy.
Most of all, know that we love you, and our hearts ache for you to be granted your freedom so we can hug you again. We implore those who are holding you to show mercy and use their power to let you go.
The threat against Kasig was made in the same Islamic State video that announced the beheading of British aid worker Alan Henning. It was the fourth such killing of a Westerner by the group, following the deaths of 2 U.S. journalists and another British aid worker. The video has triggered swift condemnation from the British and U.S. governments and the United Nations Security Council, which called the murder heinous and cowardly. Islamic State is believed to be holding fewer than 10 Western hostages in Syria. Meanwhile, fighting continues to rage between Kurdish rebels and Islamic militants over the strategic town of Kobani. A Kurdish member of the Turkish parliament pleaded with the international community for help to save the predominantly Kurdish town, which Islamic State said they would take within days. Kobani's resistance has prevented it from consolidating territory across Syria's north. U.S.-led bombings against militant targets have done little to stop the group's advance in northern Syria towards the Turkish border, piling pressure on Turkey to intervene. Saudi Arabia has taken aim at Islamic State by mounting a battle for hearts and minds at this year's Hajj pilgrimage. Clerics are warning pilgrims that the hardline group is evil and seeking to recruit their children to fight in Iraq and Syria. Saudi Arabia declared Islamic State a terrorist organization in March. Islamic State has vowed to topple the Saudi government, but some religious leaders in the kingdom have expressed sympathy for Islamic State fighters, saying the group was formed by the West to weaken the Muslim world. Pilgrims have been flocking to the holiest sites in Islam on the second day of the annual event. About 3 million Muslims are expected to perform Hajj this year.
The first Ebola patient diagnosed in the United States is now in critical condition. But U.S. health officials are confident they've contained the virus by placing 50 of those possibly infected under observation. Sonia Otero reports.
Thomas Eric Duncan's Ebola predicament has deteriorated. Doctors treating him at a Dallas hospital say he's gone from serious but stable to now being listed in critical condition. Of the 50 people the CDC believes Duncan might have infected, 9 had direct contact with him and are now in isolation as a precaution.
We are confident that none of those with definite contact had any symptoms related to Ebola. None of them had fever.
One congressional Dallas candidate says residents need to stop causing alarm.
If the CDC is being correct and truthful and honest to the community, no one should be afraid and the alarmists should turn it down. One case diagnosed in America is not a reason for people to panic.
But this and other fears that Ebola might spread like wildfire now that it is in the U.S. led to a scare at a New Jersey airport. CDC agents in biohazard suits had to remove a sick man from a United Airlines plane, sending passengers panicking. Ebola has clearly overwhelmed authorities in Sierra Leone. Tempers rose when the body of one Ebola victim lay uncollected for 4 days, despite a police official reporting his death. This is why volunteer health workers are constantly being trained on how to avoid the virus.
We cannot afford to have any more healthcare workers affected by the virus, or let alone killed by the virus.
The raging outbreak has equally inundated Liberia, where a former police commissioner is now coordinating Ebola burials and testing victims.
We are going to take her blood specimen to find out whether the cause of death was Ebola.
The Ebola death toll in West Africa now stands at 3,439. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
The twists and turns in Brazil's presidential race will end at the close of today. Many expect the outcome to force a 3-week runoff campaign between incumbent Dilma Rousseff and one of her 2 top challengers. Rousseff held a commanding lead in all recent opinion polls, but it's unlikely she'll win the absolute majority required to avoid a second-round election. She'll likely face former Environment Minister and Senator Marina Silva or Aécio Neves, the former governor of Brazil's second biggest state. Surveys say 70% of Brazilians want change. Rousseff has promised to expand social programs, while Silva and Neves are offering more centrist economic approaches, such as central bank independence, more privatizations, and trade deals with Europe and the US. All right, over to you for sports.
Yeah, and we begin with a show by Lewis Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton has won the Japanese Grand Prix to increase his lead at the top of the Drivers' Championship.